Hi, thanks again for your interest in our RTSA GUI, and in this video installment I want to talk about markers and peak search. So here I have the FM band that gives us a lot of nice peaks to work with to show you how peak search and markers work. So the first thing I want to do is turn on a marker, and the way I can do that is by quickly pushing the marker button, and that'll create a marker at the center frequency of the graph. So there we are at 103 megahertz. Now I could go to peak search, and if I hit peak search button, it will move the active marker. In this case, 1 is the active marker because it is in purple. And when I hit peak search, it will move it to the peak, which just right now it just kind of went off the screen. There it is coming on the top of the screen. So let me change that amplitude so we can see everything. I have this with trace averaging, so it's modulating a little bit. And let's change this to 4 dB. Okay, now we can see everything. Okay, so now that I have peak search on, go back to peak search, and if I hit next peak, it will find the next peak right or left, the next highest peak on the graph, and continue that all the way down. And of course, next peak right will find the next peak to the right, and next peak left will find the next peak to the left. What's very helpful if I want to drag a marker, which I can do, and I can't quite get it on the peak, I can't quite drag it there, next point left and next point right, take it to the next display point, and I can click that till I get it right on the peak. So that's next point right and next point left. Of course, I can create a marker delta, and what it does is creates that marker into a delta and created a fixed marker at marker 2. Again, I can put this at the peak there, and I can change this fixed marker back to a normal marker if I want. So if I go back to marker here, and I want marker 2 to be a normal marker. So however you want to choose to use a marker, they can be fixed, they can be normal, or what you might call a tracking marker or a delta marker. Okay, so now every time I click on a new tab now, new marker, this marker here, marker 3, it will create a new marker in the center frequency. I'll just drag that off somewhere. If I do the same thing in peak search, every time I create a new marker in peak search, it will create it at the peak. So do another one, and it created it over here this time. So you get an idea of how to use markers. So right now I have marker 6 as my active marker. You can see it here, and you can see it up here, marker 6 in the upper right hand corner. And if I turn on marker table, we can see the markers that we have on, and we can scroll down and see marker 6 and its value. Let's go back to peak search and use the marker to center, which will move marker 6 to the center frequency. And there we go. We now have marker 6 in the center frequency. Let's now change our span to 1 megahertz. And for brevity of time, I'm going to pause the video for a second and set up some markers for you. Here I've set up some delta markers relative to marker 1, so you can see how you can make some measurements with markers. So you can see that marker 2 and marker 5 are about the same distance apart from marker 1, one positive, one negative, and the same thing with marker 3 and 4 being very close to the same delta from marker 1. And depending on what the mask is here, I don't know exactly what it is off the top of my head, you can put those markers where they need to be, and if you want, you can measure channel power of those sidebands as well. So, or the main lobe, or all of it. So that gives you a quick summary of how markers work. One thing I didn't mention was continuous peak for the active marker. Let's say marker 1. I turn on a continuous peak, and no matter what I have on the screen, it will keep that as the marker on the peak. So if I go back to span here and open this up a little bit, let's say 5 megahertz, marker 1 is going to go find the peak, and it turns out it's the particular one that we're on right now. But if I change my center frequency to 93 megahertz, you can see now it has found that peak on the graph. So that's how continuous peak works. So I think that wraps it up for markers right now. And again, we thank you for your attention in learning about our GUI interface.